everybody, Steven here yet again. Today I would like to talk to you about some DC figures that I didn't really talk about before, and that would be Aquaman figures based on the Justice League Throne of Atlantis animated movie. So these are the four figures that are based on that movie that you see in front of you. There is Ocean Master, Mera, Aquaman, and Black Manta. So let's start with Aquaman first. They're all made pretty much the same way as they look in the cartoon. However, most of them don't really come with any accessories because their hands are usually sculpted in a fist form. However, they still look pretty good regardless of it. Articulation is another minus because they're not very well articulated. They seem to have articulation in the arms. They cannot move it much sideways, very little. The head can turn, but the joints in the head are very tight. So he can roughly turn it left and right, and I would assume he could turn it the whole 360 degrees, except, as I said, the joints are so tight I don't want to even try because it might break it. DC Collectibles and DC Direct are known to have sometimes problems with the quality control. The material is not always the best, and in some cases the arms or the legs will simply crack and fall off as soon as you try to pose them. Another thing is that lately, at least in the DC Collectibles line, they are not putting any plastic stands, so you cannot really position these figures much other than to just put them on a flat surface and hope that their feet will hold them so that they would stand without taking a dive. But if you can have some custom or plastic stands or otherwise from older lines, then you can simply reuse those. That's what I sometimes do when the figure doesn't come with any stand. I simply try to look for something among the old stands from before that might be compatible with them. Anywho, back to Aquaman here. As I said, the serious lack of articulation in all four figures. It's mostly just basic articulation. So for example, which is pretty much valid for most of them, is that there is no waist articulation, there is no up crunch. There is a bicep swivel, at least that much, and there is elbow movement. There is no wrist movement whatsoever. The feet have no articulation at all. Only articulation that's visible is the one in the knees, that he can bend the leg that much, and he can sort of move the leg forward about that much. And he can do a split, but not a complete one. Roughly, at least in the case of mine, he can do about that much of a split, which is not really a split. When you look at it, it's sort of halfway there. He doesn't come with any weapons, none, not even his trident. And the way he was portrayed in the animated movie is practically that he wasn't even aware who his mother was. His father, according to the original story, that was known in the comics at least, that his father was working in a lighthouse for many, many years, and during some serious storm, he saved Aquaman's mother, who happens to be the Queen of Atlantis. Practically what happened next is that the two of them fell in love, and that's how Aquaman was born. His original name before he became Aquaman is Arthur Curry. And over the years, ever since he was created in the comics up until now, he went through so many changes in the way he looks. So there is many variations of him out there, especially in the comics and the figures. So this is the animated version based, as I said, on the animated movie, but he has another look in the Justice League cartoon series and in the comics as well. And most of the time, one thing is common, that he would wear the green pants and some semblance of an orange shirt or an armor of a sort, and he would usually carry the trident as a weapon. And unlike other Atlanteans, he's able to walk both worlds because he's half human and half Atlantean. Of course, on his mother's side he's an Atlantean, on his father's side he's human, so he's able to go on surface and, of course, go underwater as well. So that's Aquaman. And besides, another thing to mention in regards to Aquaman here, that he's finally getting his very own movie this December, with actor Jason Momoa playing Aquaman. And from what I've seen so far, the trailer looks pretty good. So what sort of kind of made me feel that I should at least review some of these figures since the movie is coming, and Aquaman is getting his own spotlight now, so can't wait to see the movie itself. Now the next figure is a young woman who is practically, at least in the cartoon if I remember correctly, she's a captain of Queen's Royal Guards. So she's a fighter for sure, and this is how she looked in the cartoon, and her name is Mera. Mera is just a soldier at that point in time. Later on, when Aquaman discovers his true origins, and Mera was the person to reveal to him, and when he started ruling Atlantis eventually Mera will become his wife and become the queen of Atlantis. Her figure is showing her mostly the way she looked in the cartoon, but with no actual weapons. However, I believe, since I found this figure loose, that there may have been a weapon that goes into the hand here, because the hand is an open one while the other one is sculpted as a fist. Her articulation, just like Aquaman's, is pretty much the same, that it's very limited in the movement, and all these figures are quite limited in any articulation whatsoever, except the basic one, so you cannot really get a lot of poses out of them, other than to just line them up like this and put them on a display. She's not wearing any footwear, so she has bare feet compared to Aquaman, and she's not quite good in doing any major splits from what I can see on mine. Oh, there we go. I guess she could, it's just that the joints can be very tight. So she can do a split about that much. She can move her leg forward as much as well, not quite actually, hers is a bit, let's see the other leg. Okay, she can move it about that much. One thing for sure, most of these figures have very tight joints. I noticed that. It's very difficult to move them, but if you put too much pressure on them to move, the way I see it, they may just break altogether, because usually the plastic pegs inside the bodies are very easily breakable. Just a slight pressure and they will crack. She also has a long ponytail sculpted, and one thing about the ponytail is that it could easily break off because it's connected sort of by a sculpted hairband, but the way I see it, that's the weakest point of the head and the hair itself, that if that part breaks, it will be rather difficult to put it back on, other than to just super glue it back on. Anyhow, that would be Mera. And now we're going to cover two of the arch enemies of Aquaman, both of them with their own unique stories. So let's try and start that with Black Manta. Now Black Manta is an actual human, he's not an Atlantean. And there is several different origin stories about him, mostly from the comics, so it's kind of impossible to pinpoint his exact origin story, but some stories go to the extent that, or at least most of them agree, that he was just a kid who lived in some part of US, and that he was, according to one story, kidnapped several times because he lived along the beach. He was kidnapped by a sort of a mercenary ship. He was forced to do all sorts of manual labor. He was physically abused and so forth. And that one time he noticed Aquaman passing by with his dolphins. He tried to signal Aquaman for help. Aquaman didn't notice him. So he realized that he's on his own. So he fought his way and killed one of his assailants, and little by little he managed to escape from the ship. But he bore a grudge toward Aquaman for not helping him. So that's according to one story. According to another, Black Manta's father was a mercenary, and Black Manta to work together with him as mercenaries for hire by whoever has the most money to pay. And during such time, there was a clash with Aquaman's father, from the lighthouse, and anyway, in that altercation, Aquaman's father died. So there was a sort of a creation of the permanent fight between the two of them. But then again, I think according to the movie, if I'm wrong, because Black Manta, spoilers, unless you saw the trailer, he will be in the movie as well. I had the impression that Black Manta's father, at least in the movie, just my opinion, that he's also a mercenary there. And when Aquaman came to bust that pirate submarine where his father was, it seems to me that during that fight that Black Manta's father died in the fight. And that's how Black Manta swore revenge. This is just my guessing watching the trailer anyway. I don't really know if that's what they're aiming for. And another story goes that he was just a kid when he was taken to Arkham Asylum in Gotham City and placed there under the care of the staff there, because from very young age he was feeling very comfortable with water, but he could not stand sleeping in a normal bed like other people could, and it would inflict pain on him if he would sleep on a bed sheet and things of that sort. That origin story sounds a bit strange to me, but anyway, he became increasingly aggressive and violent, and in the end he attacked some of the staff there and killed them and escaped. And while he was staying in Arkham Asylum, he was fascinated with Aquaman, whom he saw on TV. Now, what provoked him to, in the end, become enemies with Aquaman, I'm not sure that I saw that particular information, but as I said, there was just too many different versions of his story. Anyway, back to the figure here. Black Manta, again, just like the previous two figures, has very limited articulation about him. He does have one different thing, that he has his classic helmet that's molded on, and it cannot be taken off to reveal his human face. There is also some tubes that are connecting his helmet all the way to the back of him. There is also sort of like a symbol of the Black Manta mask with two sculpted red ruby eyes at the back of him. He comes with no weapons or lasers of any kind, because he's usually armed with harpoon rifles or things of that sort. He is considered the greatest enemy of Aquaman along with the Ocean Master, but Black Manta seems to be the number one enemy, closely followed by Ocean Master. Anyway, in case you guys want to know more about his origins, you can take a look at Wikipedia. I believe they do cover his, they give his fictional biography. So the figure itself is very top heavy, but the thing is, he might have a bit of a problem standing. His feet are flat, so there's no issue there. But due to the fact that any figure that is top heavy might actually pull the figure down either backward or forward. So I would suggest, if you are going to pose him, just try and see if you can position him well on a flat surface, or at least lean him in your display case. Otherwise he will just topple everybody around him, or even take a dive off a shelf. His articulation is, as usual, as I mentioned, limited. There is movement in the elbows and the knees. He can do a split, at least in the case of mine, about that much. The head can turn a little bit to the left and right. It's mostly static. There is a bicep swivel, so I can go to the left and to the right. There is no ab crunch, no waist articulation, no wrist articulation, and no ankle articulation. But he still looks pretty good, and just the way he should based on the cartoon itself. And then we'll cover the last one here, and that will be Ocean Master, also known as Orm Marius. He is supposed to be the half-brother of Aquaman, due to the fact that Aquaman's mother had to return eventually to Atlantis, and she had to leave Aquaman's father and Aquaman himself and go back to her underwater kingdom. She married an actual Atlantean to secure the royal line for Atlantis, and her son was born, and he is a pure Atlantean, and he bears great deal of hatred toward the surface dwellers, and on numerous occasions he would try to start the war against the surface dwellers and simply punish them for all the things they did to the oceans and seas over the centuries. He doesn't have a removable helmet, it's just sculpted on, but that helmet looks pretty good. Again, limited articulation. He bears the royal symbol on his chest, what seems to be a royal symbol. He has a molded belt and also a rubber cape that's also sculpted on him. He also has sort of, I believe they're like corals attached on the side of his boots. So he seems to be wearing a regalia of the royalty of Atlantis. His mother never really wanted the war against the surface dwellers. She thought that it could be diplomatically reached an understanding between Atlantis and the surface people, but her son was always very much against it, and he was against any idea of actually sharing the kingdom or anything of that sort with his half-brother once he learned that he has a half-brother. So in the comics, it's practically that's how the story goes, that he would always constantly give trouble to Aquaman and always oppose him, and he would be the second greatest enemy of Aquaman, Black Manta being the first. He comes with no weapons either, although I do believe that there must have been, again because this is a loose figure that I got, there must have been at least a trident or something that he's holding in his hand. This figure, or this particular character, was made once before and once recently. Before he was made under DC Direct line, in his original look, in the line that's called History of DC Universe. So he appeared there in slightly different costume and colors, and he had the trident. And recently, he's been released based on the upcoming movie of Aquaman that's coming out in December, where again his costume is very much similar to this one, but with the color variations, and he also comes with a trident as well. So this is Orm, the half-brother of Aquaman. So this is the end of my first part of the discussion in regards to Aquaman. There will be at least one or two more videos covering the figures about Aquaman coming. So if you like this video, please put a like, and I will catch you guys next time. Thank you. Bye.